You think you know the French Revolution. You picture the guillotine, right? That giant, scary blade. Forget a machine. I'm about to show you one of the most insane executions in history, and it was done by a mob with their bare hands. This is the story of Princess de Lamballe, Marie Antoinette's best friend. What a mob did to her on September 3rd, 1792, is unbelievable. We're going to uncover the 100% verified facts of her murder and expose the stomach-churning legends that people still think are true. This is a story about insane loyalty, absolute terror, and how fast a human being can be turned into a symbol of hate that must be destroyed. Before she was public enemy number one, she was a person living the craziest life you can imagine. Marie-Thérèse Louise de Savoie-Carignan was born in Italy in 1749 to a super-rich family. At 17, she married the Prince de Lamballe, who had one of the biggest fortunes in France. But here's the crazy part. Her husband died within a year, leaving her a widow at just 18. That tragedy led her straight into the French court at Versailles, where she met another young woman who was also a foreigner, Marie Antoinette. Their friendship was instant and legendary. In a palace full of fakes, they were the real deal. When Marie Antoinette became queen, she gave Lamballe the massive job of superintendent of her household. This was a huge deal. Lamballe wasn't just staff, she was family. But that loyalty came at an insane price. When the public started to hate Marie Antoinette, they hated her friends too. They printed these disgusting, nasty pamphlets that accused the Queen's inner circle of everything. They twisted her close friendships with women like Lamballe into scandalous rumors about secret love affairs, which just made the public even angrier. Lamballe, the quiet, loyal friend, was transformed into a supervillain. She was called a corrupting influence, a spy for Austria, and an enemy of France. A giant target was painted on her back, and things were about to get 100 times worse. When the Bastille prison was stormed in 1789, the world flipped upside down. The monarchy started to crumble, and aristocrats were running for their lives, getting out of France as fast as they could. And Princess de Lamballe? She was safe in London. Her friends and family begged her, "Stay here, don't go back." But her loyalty to Marie Antoinette was absolute. The Queen was in danger, and Lamballe believed her place was right by her side. Marie Antoinette asked her to come back, writing, "I must live and die with her." So Lamballe literally wrote her will, knowing she was probably going back to her own death, and traveled back to Paris. She walked right back into the fire. She was there when the royal family tried to escape and failed miserably. She was there on June 20th, 1792, when a mob stormed the palace. An eyewitness said that through the whole attack, Lamballe only seemed worried about the Queen's safety, not her own. That loyalty would cost her everything. On August 10th, 1792, the monarchy was completely overthrown. The royals were locked away in the Temple fortress, and Lamballe was separated from the Queen and thrown into La Force prison, one of the darkest, filthiest, and most terrifying places you could ever be. By late August 1792, Paris was in total panic mode. An enemy army was marching towards the city, threatening to burn it to the ground if the royal family was harmed. This backfired horribly. Instead of being scared, the revolutionaries went crazy. They were convinced that spies and traitors were hiding inside the city's prisons, just waiting to break out and attack them. The revolutionary leader, Georges Danton, screamed, "To conquer them, we must dare, dare again, always dare, and France is saved." That daring turned into a monster. On September 2nd, the killing began. For 5 straight days, mobs swarmed the prisons and started one of the biggest killing sprees you have ever seen. This is now known as the September Massacres. They dragged men and women from their cells, held 10-second fake trials, and then hacked them to pieces in the courtyards. The streets literally ran red with blood. And where was Princess de Lamballe? Trapped in the middle of it all, listening to the screams from outside. She wasn't just any prisoner. She was the ultimate prize. She represented everything the mob hated. It was only a matter of time before they came for her. On the morning of September 3rd, they came for her. 2 guards walked into her cell. The killings had been going on all night. Now it was her turn to face the so-called tribunal. This wasn't a court. It was a joke. It was just a few guys sitting at a blood and wine-stained table. They were there to decide who lived and who died in seconds. When Lamballe walked in, she nearly fainted when she saw the piles of dead bodies in the courtyard. They asked her a few questions, and she stayed completely calm. Then came the final test. They told her, swear to liberty and equality and hatred to the king and the queen. This was her last chance to live, and she said no. She told them, I will readily swear to the first, but I cannot swear to the second. It is not in my heart. A man next to her whispered, swear, if you do not swear, you are dead. But she refused to betray her friend. Another account says she just told them, whether I die sooner or later is a matter of indifference to me. I have made the sacrifice of my life. The verdict was instant. The judge announced, let Madam be set at liberty. It sounded like she was free, right? Wrong. It was a secret code. It was the signal for the mob waiting outside. It meant, this one is yours. She was pushed through the door, straight towards her killers. The second she was shoved into the courtyard, it was absolute carnage. The ground was a slaughterhouse covered with bodies. A mob, their faces twisted with rage, closed in on her. This is where the story gets really insane, and we have to separate what actually happened from the wild rumors. But the verified history is still unbelievable. What we know for certain is this. The mob murdered her. Eyewitnesses saw a little lady dressed in white, standing alone for a split second. Then the first blow from a pike or a hammer hit her in the back of the head. Her cap fell off, and her long blonde hair tumbled down. A second blow hit her forehead. She fell to the ground. What happened next was a complete frenzy. The mob swarmed her, stabbing and beating her to death with pikes and sabers. It was brutal, chaotic, and it was over fast. But they weren't finished. They cut off her head. This was the ultimate act of degradation. They stripped her body completely naked and left it in the street. Her remains were never officially found. These are the cold, undisputed facts. She was beaten to death and decapitated because she wouldn't betray her friend. The truth is horrifying. But what the mob did next, and the myths that came from it, are somehow even more grotesque. The murder wasn't enough. The mob used her as a weapon. They stuck her severed head on the end of a pike and started a ghastly parade through the streets of Paris. Their destination? The Temple prison. Their goal? To force Marie Antoinette to see what they had done to her best friend. This was pure psychological warfare. When the mob got to the temple, they gathered under the window and started shouting for the queen to come out and look at the head. Some rumors even say they wanted her to kiss the lips of her dead friend. Inside, the family heard the terrifying noise. The king's valet saw the head and knew exactly what it was. As Marie Antoinette asked what was happening, guards rushed to block the window. Now, we don't know if she actually saw the head. But what we do know is a guard told her bluntly, "They are trying to show you the head of the Princess de Lamballe." Just hearing those words was enough to break her. Marie Antoinette let out a scream and collapsed in a dead faint. She reportedly wept all night. The mob had achieved its goal. They inflicted a deep psychological wound. They murdered her friend as a stand-in to torture the woman they truly hated. That image of her friend's head on a pike would haunt Marie Antoinette for the rest of her life. The real story is horrifying enough, but the myths that came out of this are on another level. For centuries, people have been repeating these totally fake stories. So let's debunk them. Right now, the most persistent and lurid myth is about the sexual desecration of her body. Stories spread that she was raped, her breasts were cut off, and her genitals were mutilated. This is almost certainly false. Contemporary records, even from people who hated her, don't mention it. These grotesque details were added later, mostly in royalist propaganda, to make the revolutionaries look like inhuman monsters. We even have an official record of the items found in her pockets, which means her corpse was still clothed at that point. Then there's the myth of cannibalism. Rumors flew that her heart was torn out and eaten. Again, this seems to be a complete fabrication created for maximum shock value. There is zero credible evidence for this. Other myths are just as sticky. One said her head was taken to a hairdresser to be powdered and styled to make it look prettier for the queen. Nope, never happened. Another story claims she hid a secret message to the queen in her hair, a romantic idea with zero proof. And as we said, the biggest myth is that Marie Antoinette was forced to kiss the lips of Lamballe's severed head. We know from multiple accounts this did not happen. So why were these insane myths created? Propaganda, shock value. And let's be honest, people love a grotesque horror story. But by focusing on the fake stuff, we risk losing sight of the real woman at the center of this unbelievable tragedy. The killing of Princess de Lamballe wasn't a state execution. It was a lynching. It was a ritualistic murder by a mob that saw her as a powerful symbol, not a person. Her death is one of the most infamous moments of the entire French Revolution. The verifiable truth of her end is disturbing enough. She was a woman whose only crime was loyalty. She chose to return to a city on fire to stand by her friend. For that, she faced a sham court, refused to betray her principles, and was handed to a mob to be beaten to death and decapitated. Her head was then used as a weapon of psychological torture. The reality is horrific enough on its own. It doesn't need fake stories about cannibalism. The truth is more chilling because it shows how quickly political rage can destroy empathy, how easily a crowd can become a death squad, and how a person's life can be boiled down to a single hateful idea. The story of Princess de Lamballe is a sobering reminder of the human cost of revolution. It's about what happens when personal loyalty collides with political fury. It forces us to realize that the most horrifying stories aren't always the fabricated ones. They're the ones that are true. She remains a tragic figure, remembered less for her life and more for the unspeakable savagery of her death. What did you find most shocking about the true story of the Princess de Lamballe? Do you think it's more important for history to focus on the verified facts or explore the powerful myths? Let us know what you think in the comments. And for more deep dives into the dark and often misunderstood chapters of history, make sure to subscribe.